Did you get that camera? It is what time? 3:40 on Tuesday the 2nd of April. 1 week until the Tiny Desk performance. Writing songs within constraints. And we have... Tea? And a song idea.
What?
One song idea.
Oh. Cue. Montage.
The idea behind my recording project was to solve a problem that always happens to me. I leave everything to the last minute and I have to work insanely hard, stressed out, and under pressure to get everything done on time. It is exhausting and I wanted to come up with a better system for myself because it's never usually a purposeful thing for me to leave everything to the last second. That's why I set out to research understanding creativity within self-imposed time constraints in the songwriting process, to use time constraints to my advantage. I decided to explore the relationship between time constraints and creativity through self-reflection and involve a select few of my close friends and fellow musicians to help me along the way. I wanted to see if it would make any difference to my creativity in the songwriting process, and I wanted to gain a better understanding of myself and how I work best. I asked Nicole, Vishal and Augustus to collaborate with me in the songwriting process. I chose these individuals because I've worked closely with them before, they understand me and I trust them. Constraints can make a problem or task more manageable and possibly even more interesting. When people are given free rein to solve a problem, they tend to be under-creative and adopt existing methods that have worked in the past. From prior research, I understood that putting constraints on the creative process can make a task more manageable and potentially have a focusing function on completing it. It was suggested by Trump that having too little or too much constraint does not help creativity, but having the right amount does. Going into the writing sessions with my collaborators, I debriefed them on my intentions for the project and the session ahead. I arranged 4 to 5 hour sessions with each person with an aim to write a song with a full structure in that allocated time. Nicole, being the other half of Valley Doctor and my primary collaborator throughout the project, was briefed differently to Vishal and Augustus. For us, I set time constraints on our creative practice on different occasions and in different locations. We did a session late at night in our home studio setup, a session in vestry, and a session in the basement studios. The music for Price was written by Vishal and I. The music for Granted was written by Augustus and I. I wrote Reason with Nicole, as well as an instrumental track on the EP called Chain. Nicole and I wrote all the voice melodies, and Nicole was the lyric writer throughout the project. I just want to ask you about how you felt working within the constraints of time of my project.
I mean, first of all, it's just very daunting whenever you have a time constraint. I'm so used to working alone, like by myself, and I think the biggest issue with that is without the time constraint, I'm always like, I can continue this later. So I'm usually not really sure what I'm doing with the time constraint, as well as the fact that I'm working with you. There's the element of, I don't want to disappoint the person I'm working with. And also, oh, we gotta have something by the end of this session. I think just that in itself sort of forces you to like fire on all cylinders in your head.
It was easier because I didn't really care about sounding bad or anything like that. It was like, we have to do it. And then I sounded better than I usually did.
Well, from the start I felt very confident only because it was with you. We've written songs like for fun. So like having that time constraint, it didn't really feel like unnatural. And I felt just safe, so maybe that helped me immediately. When you're like either working by yourself or you just don't have a time limit, you tend to like overthink a lot and just like spend way too much time on like certain sections that you could do basically in like realistically in half an hour. Like, but instead you just sit there for hours and hours, like try to get it perfect. So I think that definitely helped, making decisions more quickly. We just sat down, we made one section, A, B, A, B, C, like threw the structure together. Like if we were to have, I don't know, the whole day just for writing the song, then we, I don't know, may have just one verse and that's it, because we would have like tried to get it so perfect.
It's not really about getting things perfect, is it?
Yeah.
You want to get the idea down, and if I'm there hyper-fixating on this guitar thing that I can't quite get right. But the idea is there, then that's what matters, and that's what you really pushed throughout the session. It was like, it doesn't matter, you can come back later and do it better. What matters now is just keep the ball rolling.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it did a difference, mainly in doubting choices. I think it like eliminated a big process that I usually have of having loads of options and going through them over and over again to make sure it's the best one. So it was way less selective and more direct.
You're not wasting time thinking about, perfecting the sound or getting things 100% right, because most of the time creatively you don't want to be 100% right. I think that's what makes things cool and unique.
Because we had the knowledge of each other, the speed at which we could make decisions, we weren't relying on one another to be like, oh, is that okay?
Yeah, and also I feel like when you know each other, you can save time by being more honest with each other, like, saying, oh, okay, we can finish that later, or like, oh, okay, man, like, you got it, it's fine, and stuff like that.
I couldn't have done that with anyone else, because they would have told me to off. Yeah, I think you had to be really comfortable with someone to do something like that, because if not, I would just hate you. It can't be personal, and a random person wouldn't know that it's not personal.
Before the writing session, if you were a bit anxious about having only a couple of hours to get a thing done.
Obviously that little thought is always there, like, but yeah, you cannot help it. It's always like you're afraid that you might not come up with anything at all.
I think initially I thought it was going to stress me out, but once like we were physically in the room, it was more of like motivation. That tiny bit of stress of thinking like, what's going to work the best? What am I going to play? What am I going to do on this? But very quickly that sort of changed into a lot more of a positive outlook of like, oh, I'm going to get this done.
It was stressful and tiring. For me, usually the part that's the most exhausting is the lyrics, because they need to be perfect, and they're not perfect in quite a few of them. But I had to put something. That was the most painful part, to sacrifice my perfectionism because time was running out.
How did being in time constraint affect like your creative approach to actually playing and writing something?
I think it definitely changed a lot of things for me. Whenever I'm playing like bass or guitar or anything like that, I'm usually the kind of person that like, I'll bring my pedal board along, this is the tone I'm going for, I'll mess around with effects. But in this situation with the time constraint, I knew like that wasn't the option. I wanted to actually get stuff down. When we walked into the session, we just plugged the bass, like DI, and we were like, yeah, we're happy with that sound. That's a good enough sound. If any smaller changes need to be made, they can be made, but that is a good starting point.
It kind of made it more fun. I feel like when I have more time, I am more rational. Whereas with this, I just had to make a choice quickly. In the other way, it's just like ages in one song, and you might still not even like it, and might still go and change it. So you might as well do it this way, and then go in and change the little things, because most of it you will like. But also the time constraint also made it feel like less exhausting. Like usually when we're writing the songs, I feel like I'm putting all my creativity into it. With this, it was more like, where is this coming from? And it felt way less exhausting in terms of using up creativity, because usually it's just like I'm pouring myself out.
Well, immediately I felt like you were just pulsating with different ideas. So especially it being my home setup, I just felt kind of natural sitting, like behind the laptop, honestly, and just like taking the role of like the kind of producer, showing the way, and just like basically picking from like little things from what I heard from you, and just trying to make those decisions from like the producer mindset, I guess. But I just felt like it happened so naturally because I wanted you to just kind of, freely express what like your ideas.
The writing of Price was probably the most difficult for me to complete. The first session I had on this tune was with Vishal, where we workshopped my guitar idea and we fleshed it out into a full song structure. The experience was challenging because we had 3 different sections that didn't make a lot of sense, but we kept going until we tied each bit together, and our approach was all hands on deck to get a demo recorded. I organised a session with Augustus in his home setup where we wrote Granted. This was such a quick and easy experience with Augustus, and we wrote the sections in about an hour and spent the rest of the time thinking if we should add more, and we didn't. We didn't have any ideas going into the session, we just discussed the vibe that I wanted to go for. And this is when I brought the song to Nicole, and she came out with the exact top line that it needed. Oh yeah, that's cool. Chain was originally meant to feature vocals from Nicole, but what we made together ended up a real nice instrumental piece. Maybe we'll go back and record vocals, but who knows. This was a new experience for me writing this one because I was like the vessel for Nicole's brain in a way. I would play a chord and she would sing a note or direct me where she heard the next note.
It was like just way more because we were both giving it a lot. You were showing lots of new things that I really hated and others that I really loved. So it was just interesting to be like directing what you were playing without me touching the instrument. So it felt kind of like an orchestra.
This was the first session for the project and it was difficult adapting to being under the pressure of time. But it was also the first time I had felt the reward of knuckling down, focusing and pushing ideas out as fast as possible, like my collaborators said previously, and then having a new song at the end of the session. Reason was a song Nicole and I wrote on the couch one evening, and it took not a lot of time at all because it was a pretty simple tune. Our main goal stylistically for the song was to keep it as simple as possible and retain where Valley Doctor started with just acoustic guitar and vocals. Being under time constraints did affect my creative outcomes and approaches. I found that my creativity for new ideas flowed rapidly when I knew I needed to get something done. Collaborating with others within the constraint also propelled my ideas forward and helped me commit or discard ideas. My earlier research influenced my design of the time constraints and it affected my creativity by channeling it and focusing it. I found myself feeling tired but liberated after the songwriting sessions because it implemented discipline and structure to my creative process, in turn forcing me to write and finish pieces of music. It not only forced me to commit to ideas and make decisions quickly, it also instilled more confidence in my abilities as a songwriter. I didn't expect this project to give me trust in myself as a songwriter, and it was extremely rewarding to dedicate focused and productive time to my creative practice. Though the songs were written under time constraints, I don't think it compromised the quality of the songwriting. Though I could argue that some of the songs could have more detail in the composition and writing, the point of the project was to get the ideas out as fast as possible and finish them in a set period of time. If I didn't set myself time constraints during the songwriting sessions, it would be a completely different sounding EP. The satisfaction and sense of achievement when you walk away from one session with a full song is unmatched in my opinion, and working within time constraint has taught me that the annoying habit of being last minute can be used to my advantage. The songs are somewhat raw, but I think they carry a joy of spontaneity in them. My initial vision for the project was to understand creativity within material and time constraints in the songwriting process. But this changed down the line because I realized that I actually used minimal tools in the time constrained sessions anyway. It was an interesting realization when I understood that I didn't need a bunch of equipment or toys to create the songs that I wanted, thus focusing my project to document the experience of time constrained creativity. After hearing feedback from my peers and reflecting on my own experiences, it seemed that having a time constraint in the songwriting process forced us to write something fast, get it recorded, and not think too much about perfecting it. By committing to first ideas with no second thoughts, it resulted in me and my peers creating an EP which is as much about the process as the final product. And I think you can hear that in the spontaneity and the joy of the songwriting.
One more time, that's it. Oh my god, we're doing it!
We're doing it! We're forcing it out of us like a poo.
That's how I feel.
Me too.
Are you gonna include that in the video?
Yeah.